Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the literally inimitable Kevin Peterson.
Every year I come to this, I see this place packed. And I think this is one of your best retirement seminars in the Pacific Northwest. Thanks again to Apella for having me this year. It's an honor to talk to you guys about a subject that is complicated but very important and always changes. And I've got some big updates for you on the prescription drug side of Medicare this year. Some good, some bad. But again, as you guys are all approaching retirement, maybe we're already there. Looking at your finances is obviously an important aspect as you guys plan your retirement out. But how are we going to get health care insurance? And for most of us, that's going to be Medicare. And the options seem endless. But hopefully today's presentation is going to help you guys narrow down what those options look like, the fundamentals, the pros and cons, so you guys can make the correct decision as you guys get onto Medicare here. Did I go backwards on that one? Sorry, guys. There we go. All right. So today's seminar is making sense of Medicare. Now that's trying to say we're going to clear up a muddy lake. But again, there's a lot of fundamentals that go into Medicare that we're going to be covering today. A little bit of information about myself. My name's Kevin Peterson. I've been in Medicare now for almost 18 years. My firm, American Senior Resources, has been in the Pacific Northwest. We've helped thousands and thousands of people make their transition into Medicare, explain their options, and make sure that they are understanding what they are enrolling in. I'm also a lifelong resident of the Pacific Northwest. I flew back last night from Phoenix, and I told my wife I was so excited to get back to 32 degrees and snow. I am a Pacific Northwest guy at heart. I don't like the heat. She absolutely loves it. But she said, oh, that's because you have your Apella meeting on Saturday. We could have stayed through the weekend. Well, any case, what we're going to cover today, what to expect as you guys approach Medicare eligibility. Now, many people think that means I'm turning 65. That's the time I have to go to Medicare. For some of us, that is true. But for many of us that are going to continue to work, stay on employer coverage on our own employer plan or through our spouse's plan, that Medicare transition may happen many years past age 65. We're going to talk about what original Medicare Part A and Part B is, the foundation of your Medicare insurance. We'll talk about one option of adding to that, which is what we call supplemental insurance. Many people call those Medigap. If there's one thing with Medicare, there are two terms for every single thing. We're also going to talk about Medicare Part C, which is also known as Medicare Advantage or privatized Medicare. We'll talk about Medicare Part D, prescription drug coverage. Huge changes to that, and for some of us, it's going to be really good news if you're not already aware. And finally, what your next steps and resources are. So let's first start with how do we enroll in Medicare? When is that triggered? The most common reason you're eligible for Medicare is when you turn age 65. As long as you or your spouse have worked 10 years or 40 quarters, you're fully vested in Medicare Part A at no premium, but you may also be enrolling in Medicare Part B. Now again, if we're going to stay on employer coverage, we can probably delay Part B until we retire. But how do we enroll in Medicare? Well, we have a couple of awesome choices of how we get to enroll in Medicare, and they're all done through your Social Security office, our favorite place to go. You can either go in person and apply, don't recommend it. You can call them if they answer the phone and book an appointment with you 8 months later, or you can do it online. And if you like making things easier on yourself, always enroll in Medicare online. So much quicker, typically faster turnaround times as well. As I mentioned earlier, if we are still working, and I know all of us want to say, we're going to work till we're 90, we love our jobs. I wish that were the case. You're probably going to be delaying your Medicare insurance as long as you're staying on employer coverage. Now, not in every scenario. Employer plans aren't what they used to be. Long gone are the days where we had $200 deductibles with 500 out-of-pocket maximums. Deductibles on many employer plans these days are massive. Now, if you still are working past age 65 and you go, I'm not going to retire till 70, should I stay on my group coverage or not? Call a trusted advisor, Medicare professional. We'll ask you to do a little bit of homework about your current employer plan. What is the monthly premium? What is your deductible? What is your out-of-pocket maximum? And we'll then compare that to what Medicare looks like. And in some cases, especially for dependent spouses that someone is covering on their employer plan, going to Medicare is not only much less expensive, the coverage is typically much better this day and age with how employer plans continue to rise. One other thing you want to be aware of, if we're delaying Medicare past age 65 because we're staying on employer coverage, Medicare is going to give you an 8-month special enrollment period from the time your employer plan ends to get Medicare up and running before you start getting slapped with late enrollment penalties. Now, even though Medicare gives you an 8-month window to turn on Part A or Part B when you retire, you don't want to have any lapse in coverage. So if our employer plan is going to end at the end of July, you want to have Medicare fired up August 1. But you do get an 8-month window to do that before you start getting slapped with lifelong late enrollment penalties. And one more important thing to note, when you retire, if you work for companies with 20 or more employees, you will be offered COBRA. If you are 65 and older, you do not want to take your COBRA coverage for two main reasons. COBRA, first of all, is extremely expensive compared to Medicare at your guys' age. And number two, COBRA is not considered employer-sponsored health care coverage to delay or waive potential late enrollment penalties. So just remember that. If we're 65 or older, do not take COBRA medical when we leave work. So we're going to start first with what original Medicare is, Part A and Part B. I like to refer to Medicare Part A and Part B as basic Medicare or the foundation of our Medicare insurance. Medicare Part A, as I mentioned before, is for most Americans no charge. As long as you or your spouse have worked 10 years, 40 quarters, Part A is free. Part A is our hospital coverage, if you think of it that way. That covers us if we're put in the hospital, we need skilled nursing care, home health care, or hospice care. And the other half of original Medicare, known as Part B, is our medical insurance. So that covers doctors, specialists, surgeries, labs, x-rays, MRIs, infused or injected medications that we get in a clinic setting, like chemotherapy, for example. So again, your foundation of Medicare, basic Medicare, always consists of both Part A and Part B. Now, I know Jason earlier was showing some of the Medicare premium adjustments when we're in higher income brackets and ways that we could potentially plan to stay in a lower bracket or even avoid them entirely. But there's a lot on this slide. I want you guys to refer to the chart here on the right first. One of the most common questions we get with new clients that we work with is, okay, I'm turning 65, I'm on COBRA now, or I'm uninsured, I'm on a private medical plan, I know I have to enroll in Part A and Part B. Everybody tells me I need to go out and pick a supplement or an advantage plan. Why is that? What's wrong with the government's basic level of Medicare, A and B only? And can I just have Part A and Part B only if I want to? I always tell clients, yeah, you can just have A and B only, but you're very ill-advised and exposed financially for a number of reasons. If we just have Medicare Part A and Part B only with nothing else in addition to it, your Part A hospital services have a per-cause deductible of $1,676, which means if we go into the hospital in January, we go again in June, and we go again in November, we're going to pay that deductible 3 separate times. Now, don't worry, virtually any additional Medicare plan that you add to A and B is going to eliminate that deductible. Now, Medicare Part B has an annual deductible, which this year went up $17 to $257. And clients say, well, that's nothing. That's the lowest deductible I've had in 4 decades. Well, again, if we just have original Medicare A and B, once we pay those deductibles up front, Medicare A and B, or I should say Medicare only starts paying 80% of our remaining medical expenses. You guys are liable for 20% of all remaining medical charges, and there is no cap or limit to that amount. And some of these clients that I have that are going through cancer taking $25,000, $30,000 a month infusions, you can imagine how fast 20% liability with no spending cap is going to really create some financial devastation for them. And that right there is why everyone's going to choose some additional Medicare to offset those liabilities. Now again, Jason had already talked about previously about IRMA, and I'm going to touch on it here slightly too. Show of hands. Do you guys think the Medicare premium went up or down in 2025? Who says down? Who says up? Medicare premium did go up. Last year, our standard Medicare Part B premium for all Americans was $174.70 a month. This year it went up to $185. Pretty minimal by today's standards. But as you guys can see, if we're in these higher income brackets, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, your amounts for Part B can get dramatically higher. Now, the IRS, when you sign up for Medicare, automatically reports your income from 2 years prior. So all Americans in 2025 are paying these Part B premiums on what they earned in 2023. But it's a common question that says, is that locked in stone? It is a rolling 2-year look-back period. So as you roll into 2026, your 2024 income is going to be used to determine your premiums and so on. Real quick note on the IRMA adjustments. If any of you are going to be signing up for Medicare this year, next year, or those of you that are already on Medicare that may have recently got a letter telling you that your 2023 income is going to push you up into a higher bracket, there is something you guys can do about it. If you're going to be in a higher income bracket, you will get a letter from Social Security stating that the IRS has reported your income from 2 years ago. Now, on that letter, it will tell you two things. One, if you disagree with the income that the IRS has reported, I think we would all love to disagree with it, but they're pretty darn good at knowing what those income figures are. But more importantly, if you've recently had a qualifying life-changing event, and the most common one would be a retirement, a work stoppage, death of a spouse, marriage, divorce, you can file what's called a redetermination request with Social Security. Explain to them that I've just retired. My income this year is a lot less than what it was in 2023. And if they approve you, they'll look at your income as it sits currently, not from 2 years ago. So just keep that in mind, that if you are in these higher brackets, you will be notified in the mail from Social Security, and there's some things you can do about it. So earlier we talked about Medicare A and B and why we're financially exposed if we don't add some additional coverage to that. And really, with all the marketing that you guys get in your mailboxes, all these phone calls, and Joe Namath telling you to do this and that, it all boils down to really just two fundamental options. We're either going to stay with the original Medicare plan, which is Part A and Part B, and add a Medicare supplement plan, also known as Medigap, and a standalone drug plan. Or we're going to enroll in a privatized Medicare option, also known as Medicare Advantage. And there are some fundamental differences between these two types of programs. Let's do a quick recap on how traditional Medicare and supplemental plans work. When you have traditional Medicare A and B in a supplemental plan, your Medicare A and B is still your primary insurance. So when you receive medical care, your doctors, your hospitals, any other service providers that you see, they bill Medicare, federal government, Part A and Part B. They make the decision if your claim is approved, and if it is, your supplemental plan is simply there to pay off the balance, or the majority of the remaining balance. Pretty slick on how that works. You don't have an insurance company that has to go through a lot of that prior authorization and delay tactics that you can otherwise experience with Advantage programs. Medicare supplement plans are sold by private health insurance companies, but they are standardized. And what does that mean? Many of you guys have heard these terms. You're going to hear Medicare Supplement Plan G, Plan N, Plan F. It doesn't matter what insurance company you get your supplemental plan from. The benefits by law are identical. They're standardized. And the reason that's a nice feature is, one, you simply want to pick the supplemental plan that you want, a G, an N, et cetera, from a company that has one of the best prices for it. There's absolutely no difference in your coverage, your doctor access, or how your claims are administered. Why would we want to go with an insurance company that's $50, $60, $70 a month more when there's no benefit in doing so? And again, Medicare itself are the ones that control these supplemental benefits. So Medicare builds the plan structures. The insurance companies simply have the ability to offer those plans. Not going to spend a lot of time here. Our most common supplemental plans in our market and pretty much across the country right now are Plan G as in George, Cadillac plan currently available. Plan N as in Nancy is an extremely popular plan as well. But you may say, well, my aging parents or my older brother, they have this plan called Plan F that they don't pay $1 for any of their medical care. Plan F and its sister program called Plan C were eliminated from the market nationwide back in 2020. Now, people that had those plans were allowed to keep them on a grandfathered basis, but nobody new since 2020 can enroll in them. But I'll tell you right now, probably 95% of people that have held on to their Plan F are way overpaying for that level of coverage. Should probably have somebody review that for them. So Medicare Part D. Again, if we stick with the original Medicare plan, which is Part A, Part B, and a supplemental plan, we also have to carry a standalone prescription drug plan to go with it. Now, drug plans are available to anybody enrolled in Medicare. If you don't get on a Part D plan either at age 65 or within 2 months of coming off other creditable drug coverage, so when we leave work, you're going to have to pay a lifelong late enrollment penalty. So remember, with Medicare, there are timelines when you need to get stuff done. Part D drug plans are sold and offered through private insurance companies. You're only allowed to have one at a time. Now, I'm going to go over some big news that just went into force nationwide in 2025. I'm sure we have a fair amount of people in the crowd that are on Medicare now. How many people are familiar with the Medicare donut hole? Okay, we have friends, family, loved ones that go through it. These millions of Americans have to go through what we call the Part D donut hole for years and years. And that is if you're on more expensive medications, halfway through the year, you go into the pharmacy and your costs have just skyrocketed. Well, I'm happy to say that in 2025 nationwide, the donut hole is no longer a thing. No one is happier about that than me, because I don't have to explain it 500 times a year to clients that call me about it. But more importantly, the bigger thing is through the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act, and there were a number of things in that bill that went into play over the last couple of years. The final part of that is every American with Medicare drug insurance this year, for the first time ever in the history of Medicare drug coverage, now has a spending cap of $2,000 per year on their drugs. That $2,000 includes any deductible that you pay, any co-payments that you make. And just to tell you how big of a deal this is, a client I was reviewing last November who's got stage 4 terminal cancer is on this drug called Cabometyx. And I hadn't ran into this one before, and I could probably go toe-to-toe with most pharmacists. I looked it up on Medicare.gov. The monthly retail cost of this cancer drug was $38,000 a month. Now, when he goes into the pharmacy on any Medicare plan in the United States this January, just last month, his copay is $2,000. Now, that's a lot of money to a lot of us still, right? But he goes in to get that drug in February, and every other month after that, there is no charge for his medications. Now, one other thing to note with this new law, and it's surprisingly how many people aren't aware of this yet, Medicare has also built in a provision to this new law that they understand many Americans that are on fixed incomes can't come up with $2,000 right away. Every single drug insurance company with Medicare nationwide is required by law to allow their members to sign up for what's called the M3P program, also known as the prescription payment plan. And if you would rather spread your $2,000 cost out over a full 12 months, you contact your drug insurance company, they will get you signed up for this program, or you don't pay anything for your drugs at the pharmacy counter. but your drug insurance company will send you a bill every month for $166 a month. So another way to look at this new federal law, no matter how many drugs we take, no matter how expensive they are, no American can pay more than $166 a month on their prescriptions moving forward. Now, a couple things to note about this. I got bombarded about 2 weeks ago when Trump was signing some executive orders and rescinding some of these things, and a lot of my clients were concerned that this was all thrown out the window. They were not. These are still in force. It really had more to do with the government's ability to negotiate lower drug pricing with big pharma. I'm not really into politics myself. I don't know how that makes much sense. But these two big things that millions of Americans are going to benefit from are still in force and in law. So, more bad news for high-income earners. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here for the sake of time. If you're in higher income brackets, not only do you pay more for Medicare Part B, you're going to pay more for your Medicare drug coverage as well. Now, some clients over the years say, well, if I do a Medicare Advantage plan, which we'll talk about shortly, where the drug benefit is built into it, I don't have to pay the Part D IRMAs, right? IRMA is going to hit you equally no matter what you do with your Medicare options. So again, real quick, I used to have a slide here that was talking about the donut hole and the catastrophic level. Part D for advisors and for you guys has really started to become much more simple. Now, one thing to note with these new laws, in many things in corporate America or business or federal laws, when you squeeze the balloon somewhere, you're going to get an expansion somewhere else. So because these carriers now are going to be 100% responsible to pay your drug cost if you ever cap out at $2,000, 90% of plans across the country, especially on Medicare Advantage plans, are starting to add drug deductibles, which you've never had one before. And the only people that might get hurt from this new law are clients that have one semi-expensive drug where maybe their all-in cost for the year was $700 or $800, and this year it might be $1,200 or $1,300, but still no more than $2,000 in total. But the greater good for most Americans is you guys now have a cap on your drug spending. So let's go over to the other way of getting our Medicare coverage called Medicare Advantage, also known as privatized health care. Now, these are private medical plans. They often do provide some additional benefits that traditional Medicare and supplements don't give you. A little bit of dental care, annual eye exam, coverage for glasses, alternative medicine, although that is much harder to find in our market in 2025. Medicare Advantage plans do not replace Medicare, but they take over all the administration and pay your claims instead of Medicare. To be on a Medicare Advantage plan, when you see these TV commercials, $0 premiums, that does not mean you don't have to continue to pay your Part B premium. Do not make that mistake if you're on an Advantage plan that you don't have to pay the government for your Part B. These plans are also limited to where you live, typically by county. So if you have a brother in Spokane and he's on a particular plan and he says, join the same plan I have, that doesn't mean that it's going to be offered in the county that you live here on the west side. So how do Medicare Advantage plans work? A common question is, how can they be $0 a month with all these extras? Someone's got to get paid. Oh, they're getting paid. When you enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, because they're taking over your Medicare benefits, the federal government is paying your Medicare Advantage plan a monthly sum, and it's pretty substantial, well over $1,000 a month, whether you're using your health care or not. And now your Medicare Advantage plan has the full risk of you, but they have to do all the administration. So they're going to be paying your providers, your hospitals. Your doctors will have to bill your Advantage company instead of Medicare itself. And although it can still work quite well, there can be a little bit more complexity, some red tape with that administration side of your Medicare as well. How are Medicare Advantage plans different from traditional Medicare and supplements? People that have traditional Medicare and supplements, although they pay more, and sometimes quite a bit more per month than Advantage members do, supplemental people say, oh, I really don't pay hardly anything for my medical care, and it's true. One of the reasons Medicare Advantage plans have lower monthly cost is you're going to have more financial skin in the game. So although with Medicare Advantage you typically do not have a medical deductible, you're going to get nickeled and dimed while you use it throughout the year. So co-pays for doctors, co-pays for specialists. Some things like cancer infusions, chemo are still going to be a percentage. So these are a little bit more what you guys have been used to with private medical or employer coverage, with the fact that you've got co-pays along the way. So I know we've covered a lot so far, and just to stay on track here, I got a few minutes left. You'll notice this slide has no background. It's because I ask my marketing gal every year to put this in our slide deck. And she goes, that's an ugly slide. And I say, that's because I built it. When I used to do tons and tons of in-person client appointments as I got started in my career 17 years ago, I had found laying out the differences of these two coverages on a little T-chart like this was the easiest way to comprehend it. When we're going to Medicare, what do we got to do first? We got to get on Part A and Part B, indicated at the blue bar at the top. That's the foundation that our Medicare house is going to sit on. And for most of us, we'll be paying the minimum premium of $185 per month. Now you're enrolled in basic Medicare, you're at a fork in the road. And you're going to decide, do I want to do a supplement or an advantage program? And some clients say, spare me the education, just tell me which one is the better choice. It's not that simple. If it was a clear choice, there would not be two choices. But they are fundamentally different, some good and some bad. Start with Medicare supplement insurance. Number one benefit, no network. We don't have to worry about who's in our network, who's not, if our network is going to change from year to year. Supplemental plans allow you to see any doctor in the United States that just accepts Medicare. Number two, we don't need to worry about referrals. We have little out-of-pocket expenses. These are standardized plans. The only way your benefits can change is if Medicare itself changes them. Downsides, they're more expensive, got to get our drug coverage separately, and we don't get any additional benefits beyond what original Medicare covers. I'm getting the plug, I got like 1 minute left, so I'm going to burn through Advantage. Advantage plans. These are lower cost, our drugs are built in, we get some additional benefits as well, which all sounds great. But we are going to be in a network, we're going to have more out-of-pocket liability, you're still going to be protected by an out-of-pocket limit, which in our market is around 6 to 7 grand, worst case scenario. And your benefits in your network can change every single year. In fact, this last year, across the country, especially here in our Northwest market, there were enormous plan cancellations on Medicare Advantage. I'm going to skip over enrollment periods real quick for the sake of time. Finally, if you guys want to join our newsletter, you can scan the QR code, you can sign up for it outside. We send out monthly bulletins on updates of what Medicare is doing, changes to the laws. I'll leave that up for a few seconds if anybody wants to do it here. You can do it out at our table as well. And then finally, if you guys need assistance, and it's the common question we get is, well, what does it cost to work with a Medicare advisor? Working with Medicare advisors costs you guys nothing. You're working with professionals that are licensed, national exams every single year. We do this day in and day out. I highly encourage you guys as you're making this transition to at least consult one and let them make sure that you're making the right decisions and getting things done on time. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Tom or Don. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to meet me outside at the table. I'm going to be around all day.